shifting the schedule. And unfortunately, I have a train I have to catch, and the trains do run on time. And so it's imperative that I get out of here soon. But this is an important topic, and that's why I agreed to make the time. I've been asked to speak about, sort of the strategic setting that we find ourselves in today. And I will say that the one thing that's emerged, first and foremost, is that we do live in a world in transition, away from, I would say, the neo-colonial era that was defined by, France Afrique, defined by the British Commonwealth, and largely defined by the United States' own neo-colonial enterprise known as the rules-based international order. This era is over. It's been replaced by a consensus-driven, multilateral approach to global problem solving that manifests itself several ways, most noticeably in the form of the BRICS Forum, who just completed their 16th annual summit, one that I think I've described as being conducted in the spirit of Bandung. And again, one would need to be a historian probably to figure this out. 1955, the Bandung Conference was a conference that ushered out the era of colonialism. It was supposed to usher in an era of multilateralism, but the Cold War prevented that. What we saw happen in Kazan, Russia, was literally the modern day manifestation of the spirit of Bandung. The rest of the world getting a voice, the rest of the world getting, a vote, the rest of the world demanding that they be paid attention to by the privileged elite that, had comprised, imperial powers, neo-colonial powers, and whatever we want to call the United States. It's this unique blend of geopolitical muscle flexing that has come to be known as the rules-based international order. So we see from a geopolitical relationship status, the world is changing. There's another major change that's taking place, and since these meetings are done weekly, we'll focus on this one. Russia has won the war in Ukraine. It's over. It's finished. Now, a lot of people are going to die still. Many of those people will be Ukrainian. A lot of them will be foreign mercenaries. Some of them will be Russian. But Russia has won this war. It's over. But the West refuses to acknowledge this. And this is the dangerous part. There is nothing the West can do, nothing the West can do to change this. There's nothing the peace movement can do to change this, too. There's a lot of people out there believing that somehow pressure could be brought to bear on Russia to take the middle ground, to accept a diplomatic off-ramp. Russia has made it clear this war ends when Russia determines this war ends, and this war will only end when Russia gets what it wants. And what it wants is total demilitarization and total denazification. Demilitarization and denazification include with it the concept of Ukrainian neutrality and perpetuity. Ukraine will never be a member of NATO. What else transpires? Russia, has said is a matter of discussion when that time comes. But Russia will not be bullied into a negotiating position. Russia will not be pressured. And this is what the West needs to understand. And herein lies the danger. We still believe that we have a vote. And the more we insist on having a vote, the more we're going to box ourselves into a corner. And depending on how much emphasis we place on this outcome, if we want to decide a Russian victory as being existential in nature to the West, then the question is, what will we do about a Russian victory? And here is the danger of nuclear war. The United States and the European Union have created a scenario that depicts any Russian victory in Ukraine as posing an existential threat to the West. And we see muscle flexing, we see nuclear saber rattling on the part of the West. Russia's not bluffing. This is the very dangerous reality of the situation we find ourselves in today. Should the West seek to push Russia, provoke Russia, otherwise seek to forcibly alter the inevitable outcome that is emerging on the battlefield in Ukraine, we could very well find ourselves in a nuclear war. To show you the extreme absurdity of this, we have the Ukrainian president, Zelensky, asking the United States to provide him with Tomahawk cruise missiles as a way of evening or leveling the playing field. It won't. All it will do is guarantee the destruction of Ukraine further and define the United States and its NATO allies as a direct participant in the conflict. And this will lead to a nuclear war. We're not out of danger yet. I know we're as people who are pursuing peaceful outcomes. Sometimes the most peaceful outcome is the shortest path to victory on the part of one of the parties in the conflict. To say that there needs to be an equitable outcome in order for there to be a just peace only guarantees that more people are going to die, and that we are lurching towards the potential of a nuclear conflict that must be avoided at all costs. In short, what I'm saying is the biggest story of this week is that Russia has won the war, and it's time for the peace movement to accept this outcome and try to deter the other parties to this conflict from seeking to expand this conflict. This is one of the most difficult challenges there is for a peace movement, because it's difficult for a peace movement to pick sides. I'm not asking you to pick the side of Russia or the collective West. What I'm saying is pick the side of peace, and the shortest, surest path towards peace is a decisive Russian victory that is happening, whether we want it to or not. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak, and good luck with the rest of your conference.
Thank you, Scott. That was former UN Weapons Inspector Scott Ritter. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us this overview. And please be careful on wherever you're going. You're a very valuable, important person in this fight for peace. Okay, so to continue, next we're going to have Helga Tsepp-LaRouche, who is the founder of the Schiller Institute and the initiator of the International Peace Coalition. Please go ahead, Helga. Do we have you? There we go. Yeah.
Well, let me say hello to all of you first. I want to emphasize the ongoing situation in Gaza and Lebanon, where the Israeli government has banned the UNRWA, the Palestinian aid organization of the United Nations, and that has obviously totally aggravated the situation. So Philippe Lazzarini, who is the commissioner of that organization, basically said that the United Nations was actually established to end the kind of horrors which led to the Second World War, and that we are now facing the same kind of chaos what led to this situation, which is a rather stark comparison of what's going on now with the period of the Nazi time. But, I think if you look at what is going on in Gaza, one cannot avoid having such comparisons. And Lazzarini also said, if you are looking today in the faces of the children in Gaza, we know that many of them will die tomorrow, and that there are actually 650,000 girls and boys under the age of 18 who are in that situation. So he said this means that the so-called rules-based order is crumbling. And I think that that is the overwhelming situation, that order is disintegrating, and that is what actually constitutes the overall danger of a global war. Now, the South African government has just delivered another report to the International Court of Justice, where they emphasize the intensification of the killing by the Israelis of Palestinians. It's a 750-page document with 4,000 additional pages of exhibitions and additional material. And obviously, they describe in great detail, the use of hunger as a weapon of war, the intent to totally displace all Palestinians from parts of Gaza. And it should be an eye-opener, but there are still governments who are delivering weapons to Israel. So now that is the situation in Southwest Asia. There are reports which I cannot confirm, I can only mention that they exist, that there could be a counterstrike by Iran even before the US election. And there are statements being quoted from Iranian officials that what will happen will be different than any scenario Israel could imagine, and that the reaction of Iran would be final and painful. Now, I mean, if that happens, it could even happen on election day. That shows you how close we are on the verge of thermonuclear war, because if it goes into a counter action, and if then eventually nuclear weapons would be used, then everything goes. Now, a similar crisis is being built up for a possible NATO intervention into Russia, by reports about these 10,000s of North Korean soldiers supposedly being in Russia, being trained. This has not been, there has been no evidence given to that. And then there was the meeting between Austin and the South Korean defense minister, and in the same period, North Korea launched an ICBM weapon, which was longer in range and higher in flight than any other weapon tested before, obviously to demonstrate that North Korea has the capability to reach US territory if necessary. So, so we have actually an extremely tense situation. And, on the other side, as we have stated previously, the alternative is also visible. The alternative was visible in Kazan, where the BRICS meeting took place, where now altogether 22 nations are members of the BRICS, at least as of the 1st of January, that's supposed to be. Altogether, it's 50 nations who want to be part of the BRICS. And in a sort of related event, yesterday and today, there is a security conference in Minsk, where there are also 600 participants from 40 countries discussing an outline of a Eurasian security architecture, obviously in correspondence to what Putin had mentioned on June 14th about the need to have a new Eurasian security architecture. Now, the situation is so much in flux, that even the EU can be counted into the crumbling architecture, crumbling system, because I mean it's very clear that the EU Commission is on a rampage against several of its members, such that Prime Minister Orban from Hungary accused the EU Commission of promoting actively regime change against the government of Hungary, a member. And the FT has a vitriolic slander against Prime Minister Fico of Slovakia, which goes in the same line. And then you have the ongoing possibility of a repetition of the Maidan coup against Georgia. Now, that shows you that the situation is really down to the wire, and we absolutely have to escalate our campaign to have a completely new paradigm. We have to leave the field of geopolitics. Geopolitics was responsible for 2 world wars in the 20th century. And now, in the age of thermonuclear weapons, if it comes to another escalation, let it be around Ukraine or let it be around the Middle East, we would be in the immediate danger of a global war, which would have nuclear weapons, and therefore could very readily mean the end of all civilization on the planet. and the human civilization, but also all other life on the planet. Now, we are very close to that in the Ukraine, because all the reports are that the Ukrainians are losing ground day by day, that the situation becomes militarily more desperate by the day. And, as Lukashenko at this Minsk Security Conference mooted, he said that now is the time to negotiate. But Zelensky, is demanding an immediate membership of Ukraine in NATO and the availability of nuclear weapons for Ukraine, which, according to Kuyat, the former General Secretary of the German Army and the head of the NATO Military Commission, said this would mean an immediate entering of NATO in a war with Russia, because obviously the implication would be NATO have access to all offensive weapon systems in the territory of Ukraine, which was the red line from the very beginning. So I think not to say that that is the only crisis, because the one effect of the crumbling order is the reflection of the escalation of so-called hunger spots in the developing countries. There are 5 countries right now who are in an immediate catastrophe. That's Haiti, Mali, the occupied Palestinian territory, South Sudan, and Sudan. But there are 22 other so-called hunger spots where people are dying for no good reason, because it would be very easy to remedy that. So the need to really change the world architecture to allow the survival of all nations on this planet, and to establish a new security and development architecture which takes into account the interest of every single country on the planet, is more urgent than ever before. Now, since we think, at least I think, but I know many of my colleagues here as well, that nothing of this will be really settled for good through the US election. There will be some changes depending who wins, but I'm not optimistic that that US election will address the underlying axiomatic reasons why we are in this crisis, this geopolitical idea that one group of nations has an interest against another group of nations, where it has the right to defend that with all means, including military means. We have to get out of that logic, and we have to establish a new system, a new architecture, which elevates us above geopolitics. And to put that on the agenda, we are suggesting to soon hold an internet Schiller conference for 2 days, where we will discuss what such a new security architecture could look like, how to get there, and what kinds of economic and cultural programs would be necessary to arrive there. As of now, we are suggesting to convene such a conference beginning of December. I have written a very preliminary invitation, which we will post in the chat room. It's very preliminary, obviously, because we will then update it after the US election, because then we will know what kind of geometry we will be in, if the election result will be known as should be expected. But in any case, we will update that invitation, and I would urge all of you who are participating in this IPC meeting to help us build this conference as a very, very powerful demonstration that a completely different design of world politics is possible. So I want to leave it at that and give it back to you, Anastasia.
Thank you, Helga, for that. We are going to do a little bit of a schedule change just because of some time limitations. So we are going to go to Jeremy next, but just before we do that, just want to let the people know who are on by YouTube or other locations, we will have a general discussion period. If you'd like to join that, please make sure to register RSVP for the Zoom link. You can find that in the chat, in the description area, or you can go to schillerinstitute.com. Just wanted to make sure that announcement was made before we went too much farther so people know. So thank you, Helga, for that. And we'll make sure to get that link in the chat for people on the Zoom here as we go along. So next, I'd like to go to Jeremy Loffredo, who, as people know, there was a mass mobilization to save him. He was captured in Israel and was detained. And man, I don't want to speculate on what happened to you, but you can probably go through a little bit of that. But we want to thank you for the work that you're doing. And we definitely need to protect more journalists like yourself. So thank you so much for joining us, Jeremy.
Thank you very much. So for those who don't know, I'm a 28-year-old independent journalist, and I've been going to and from Israel and Palestine and the West Bank since the beginning of the war, and reporting on military operations in the West Bank, reporting on the kind of direct action efforts that Israeli settlers were carrying out to block humanitarian aid at the Krim Shalom border crossing in the south of Israel. And so recently I was there. This was my third time there, and I produced a video report on the damage caused by the Iranian missile attack that happened on October 1st. And a few days later, I was detained, kidnapped, you call it what you want. I was blindfolded, shackled, and handcuffed and thrown into a military Humvee while I was trying to get into Nablus in the northern West Bank. I was taken to jail, and then I was taken to prison, and they were trying to charge me with giving information to the enemy during wartime, which carries 25 years to life as a penalty. And I was put in solitary confinement. I was given very little food, very little water. I was interrogated every night. Finally, my judge, working together with some of my colleagues, put together a dossier showing that my video didn't actually give away any secrets, but really it's our opinion that they were just using this video to stop me from doing actual investigative reports that I've produced in the past and that I was planning to produce on this trip, which I did not get to do. I was informally deported from Israel. I got no help from the American embassy. The only help I got from the American embassy was that they sent an Israeli social worker to my solitary confinement cell, and the Israeli social worker proceeded to berate me and asked me if I loved Israel, asked me why I hurt Israel, and that was the only help that I got from the American embassy at all. But I was informally deported by Israel. The case against me, providing information to the enemy during wartime, has been left open to dissuade me from ever returning to the country. And so that's what happened to me. But let's talk about like what this means. It's obvious that Israel is raising kind of the courage threshold. These are the words of Julian Assange in 2014. The courage threshold so high that people need to be willing to be incarcerated. They need to be willing, if you're in Gaza or in Lebanon, to die immediately almost by rocket fire, simply for doing your job as a journalist. The courage threshold is so high that no journalist, at least Western journalist, would dare go to Israel or go to the West Bank to do their job if they're going to report critically on the war efforts, Israel's war efforts, because they know that even if you're an American, that the privilege that being American affords you is just that you're put in solitary confinement and you're incarcerated. Maybe you're not killed immediately, but the death penalty was the charge, the most grave charge. It was 25 years to life or the death penalty, and that's for an American. They treated me like a terrorist, and my government does not help me. It might be the worst place in the world to be detained as an American, because it's the one place that America isn't willing to flex their muscles and help their own citizens. You know, I was, I guess in the words of Chomsky, I was an unworthy victim. And Surely, if I was detained in Russia, I would be a worthy victim. They could use my detainment for their own propaganda efforts to paint Russia as some authoritarian state. But when Israel's doing it, that's not useful to them. So the courage threshold has been so high. They've graduated from, digital censorship and the censorship of the internet, to threats of death and threats of delayed state violence, which is, incarceration. And I guess with that, there's a bright side to it, which is, of course, it's not that bright considering how the journalists are being treated in Gaza or Lebanon, or how I was treated. But, the Julian Assange has said that censorship is cause for celebration. It shows that the power structure is so unbelievably weak that they need to truly care what people think. And they care so much what people think right now that they're willing to kill people. They're willing to incarcerate people now. People might say, well, they clearly don't care what people think. They've been committing what many people are calling a genocide for over a year now. But I mean, the proof is the fact that they're willing to kill people or incarcerate people that are simply telling the truth about their war efforts. I mean, their power structure is so weak that they need to kill and incarcerate anyone who tells the world what's going on. And thankfully, we have things like social media now. And I was able to get my reports out, in the blink of an eye before the information could be truly censored, before maybe the newspaper printed it. But now it could be uploaded straight to the internet. And, I was detained. I was put in solitary confinement. I had no idea if anybody knew where I was. And I get to the court one day, and a Ynet journalist, an Israeli journalist, is there to testify on my behalf, showing the court that he published the same information I did. And the only difference is that he's a Zionist. He's part of Ynet. He's one of the biggest Israeli publications, and I work for the Gray Zone, which is an independent, anti-Zionist, I would consider anti-Zionist publication from the West. So I'm not Israeli, I'm not Zionist. And so I wasn't afforded the same privileges that this Israeli journalist was afforded. He was able to publish everything. I was able to publish nothing. I was jailed. And so thankfully, the courts, saw this giant contradiction, and the police wanted to keep me as long as possible. The police wanted to put me in jail forever. The courts saw this giant contradiction. They saw the mass mobilization on social media. They saw that I was not a spy. They saw that I had hundreds of bylines. I've made documentaries before. I'm not Iranian by any stretch. I'm American. There were a few people. I'm just going to give a quick shout out to, Jill Stein and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who, publicly called for my release, which, was important for me to show a judge that, very important people in America are calling for my release. I'm not some undercover Iranian spy. But the ideological, patronage system in Israel is so tight that even investigative journalists feel more, they feel that they should represent the military and the state more than they should represent, giving people the truth. So there doesn't even need to be a serious censorship in Israel, a censorship system in Israel. It's all of the journalists are in this ideological patronage system that it's self-censorship. And when self-censorship doesn't work, that's what happens to me. When self-censorship doesn't work, you get thrown in jail, you get incarcerated, you get killed. But yeah, the silver lining is the fact that censorship is cause for celebration. And we can see by the fact that they're censoring so much and censoring so harshly that they truly do care what people think, and they know that they do not have the moral high ground. So we just need to keep using social media. We need to not allow my detainment to dissuade other independent journalists from going there and reporting the truth. Legally, I'm not allowed back there, but I do plan to carry out the same types of critical journalism on the state of Israel, in the countries surrounding Israel, and from right here at home in New York. But if we stop reporting on the genocide because we fear retribution, social retribution or legal retribution, whether physical retribution, then we let them win. The whole reason they're censoring and the whole reason that they've clamped so down on the information ecosystem is because they want to dissuade journalists like myself and people like you from posting about it, from talking about it. And so that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, for that. and basically everything you've gone through. And it definitely screamed an intimidation tactic, not just against
Of
you,
course.
but against any journalist who wanted to speak out. So I wanted to see if Helga, I know you've got to get going. Helga, if you wanted to respond to Jeremy or anybody else.
No, I just want to tell you, Jeremy, that I think this freedom of information and it's a basic human rights. And I think right now what we are experiencing is an absolute effort to deny the freedom of the press, but on the other side, the freedom of the population to be informed and therefore be, able to decide what they want to do. So I think this issue of the freedom of the press and the systematic killing of journalists should become a major topic in our future deliberations. So I just wanted to thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you guys very much. Truly.
Okay, well, let's keep fighting the good fight here. Obviously, we're making some waves given that the response that they're having to people like you, Jeremy, and to others. People don't know in Germany, they've made the word genocide illegal. You can't even use the word genocide. In fact, you will be either fined or thrown in jail. So we also thank the other people from other nations who don't have freedom of speech or the right to say what they really think for doing those things as well. Okay, so next we're going to go to Jason Ross, who is with the Executive Intelligence Review. He's just coming back from the BRICS summit in Kazan, which we saw a little bit of a preview of the work that you were doing there, Jason. I think this is a really excellent opportunity to look at how actual national dialogue can work. And you were demonstrating some of that. So please, thank you for joining us, Jason. Go ahead.
Okay, well, thanks for the opportunity. So as Anastasia said, I was part of a 3-person EIR team that attended the BRICS summit in Kazan last week. This was the first summit that included the full participation of the new BRICS countries, who were added by agreement among Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa at the last meeting. Those full members are Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the UAE. Argentina and Saudi Arabia were invited, but have not joined. The summit also saw 13 additional nations as BRICS partner countries. And when you put all of this together, these 22 nations, the 9 BRICS members and the 13 partner nations, they make up 57% of the world's population, a majority of global wheat production, nearly a majority of oil, 79% of coal, 75% of steel production, 61% of electrified rail. This is most of the world in all of these, well, in almost all of these categories. They do, however, the BRICS 22 nations have only 21% of global stock market capitalization, which I'll leave it to you to think about what that means. So going into this summit, which was, people were looking for a lot in this summit. It's incredibly significant considering what's taking place around the world with the Ukraine crisis, with the pressure on China, and certainly with what Israel is doing. So right before the event, China and India announced that they had resolved, or at least taken a major step towards resolving their issues along the line of actual control, pulling back from the military altercations and animosity that had really poisoned relations between those two countries. And this was extremely significant because the biggest contradiction within the BRICS process had been the contretemps between China and India. So the fact that that moved forward, hugely significant, and that was even right before the conference started. So clearly for the conference, time for it. Prime Minister Modi said that India-China relations are important for the people of our countries and for regional and global peace and security. He's right. So about the EIR presence at the summit, it is important that EIR was there. The LaRouche movement has, since the fall of the Soviet Union, been organizing and putting forward proposals and analysis on cooperative development across what had been the Iron Curtain that Winston Churchill lowered. In the 1990s, EIR published a several hundred-page, remarkably prescient, take a look back at it, a several hundred-page special report on what was called then the Eurasian Land Bridge, which became a World Land Bridge, and which we see in its own form in China's New Silk Road. But this was a multi-decade history of the LaRouche movement in laying out what is possible when the sea-based control of trade gives way to internal development, and what it means to be able to build infrastructure corridors at high levels at a high platform of scientific productivity to transform relations between countries in an inland way, where there's enormous untapped potential. Just to mention one area, I mean, in African nations, for example, it's often cheaper for a country to sell goods or import goods, not from their neighbor, but from, the Netherlands. Why? Because the land transport is not developed in many areas to a level that really unlocks the full potential of the economy. So Lyndon LaRouche, after his imprisonment from 1989 to 1994, he made his first foreign trip after his release from prison on parole, and it was to Russia. So the LaRouche history there. Let me say something about the interactions we were able to have directly with a top Putin advisor. Anton Kobyakov is a special advisor to President Putin, and we were able to ask him 3 questions about the BRICS bringing Anglo-American NATO countries to their senses, a specific follow-up on the Israel situation, and also an invitation to join these meetings that we've been having on Fridays. On the hope that the BRICS process could introduce some sense into Anglo-American NATO world, Kobyakov said, "We hope very much for that, but we have a nuclear deterrent strategy. The main thing is that Pax Americana, if it collapses, the main thing is that when they collapse, that they not bury us all under the rubble." Regarding Israel, he said that he thinks Jews are intelligent people and that most people in Israel do not support what Netanyahu is doing. But what is going to happen? Will the people of Israel be able to preserve their statehood and their sovereignty? He said, since we were from an American publication, he said, in the US, people too are beginning to have their doubts about what Israel is doing. He said, perhaps they will hear the speeches in the expanded session and restricted format session of the BRICS summit, and perhaps they will come to their senses. We'll hope for that along with you. The overall outcome of the event was compiled formally into a very lengthy declaration called Strengthening Multilateralism for Just Global Development and Security. It had 134 points. Major themes: multipolarity, to the building of a representative, legitimate, democratic, and accountable international and multilateral system. There were calls for reform of many of the existing bodies, the UN Security Council, the World Trade Organization, the IMF, the World Bank, an end to unilateral sanctions, which are going around that UN Security Council process. The summit declaration definitely spoke out against Israel's violence and destruction in Gaza, the West Bank, and now Lebanon. They called the pager attack in Lebanon, quote, a grave violation of international law. And this also led to rethinking about the security of supply chains. Do you need to have independent supply chains? Will the world fracture into Western things and then other things? This is the kind of thought that was in the air. On financial transactions and settlements between countries, there's definitely progress being made on this. Putin has proposed that the former president of Brazil stay on as the head of the new development bank, as the BRICS bank? That's certainly a very interesting proposal, since she was the driving factor in its creation coming out of the 2014 Fortaleza meeting of the BRICS, Dilma Rousseff. Russia is putting forward specifically on new exchanges a grain exchange with plans to expand that to other commodities and then expand even beyond that, setting up an alternative system. President Lula of Brazil says that it is the time now to move forward in creating alternative means of payment for transactions between the BRICS countries. Quote, "This discussion needs to be tackled with seriousness and caution and technical soundness, but it can no longer be postponed." So this was I think one of the top issues that was on the table there. So in terms of what we were able to do at the summit, we met people from around the world, from BRICS nations, from other nations, from Cameroon, from France, from Egypt. The Egyptian was really hoping that there would have been more concrete coming out of the meeting on finance and other things. The UK, Russia, Belarus, of course, the United Arab Emirates, China, Turkey, Guinea, India, Pakistan, Venezuela. So we met people from all around the world. We interviewed some of them. They interviewed us, and that's circulating. We even met the New York Times and the European Broadcasting Union. So some of the interesting perspectives, I'll just name a couple that came from meeting people from around the world. One of them was about India. What does India uniquely bring to bear on the transformation of the world that is undergoing, that's taking place right now? How can India help that? Prime Minister Modi had said that the BRICS is not an anti-Western grouping, but it's just non-Western. And one of the Indians we spoke to had more to say about that. He said that part of what Modi was referring to there is a view that the dichotomous kind of thinking that is so characteristic of European cultures, he said that is just not a characteristic of Indian thought. The drive towards, black and white, yes or no, to dichotomizing concepts was not as powerful, and that this gave India a unique potential role in facilitating discussions about a new world. The reality of what decolonization must mean, that came up a lot. Multipolarity, what is it? This was a major topic. How will institutions relate with each other if the global institutions are losing their legitimacy? Do you create parallel ones that are only a part of the world? Do you reform those major institutions? How do you address this? This is what people thought about. I'd mentioned the separation of supply chains, the risk of that with spying and with the Israeli attack in Lebanon, the separation of payment systems with sanctions and the weaponization of SWIFT, so pushing towards regional, although potentially global, but right now regional payment systems, and even sporting events. Russia was talking up the BRICS games in Kazan earlier this year. And I think what Paris did with the last Olympics isn't exactly helping the case for the universality of the Olympics. But, all these new institutions, they definitely show that there's a new system coming into being in shaping global governance, and that a multipolar, or ideally a non-polar system, is coming into being. With the BRICS and their partners representing 57% of the world, and there were even more countries beyond those 22 nations present at the Kazan summit. I want to end with just a funny note. So I mentioned I had met reporters from some significant US and European press agencies. So one of these guys, I met him, we were talking on the shuttle bus from the airport in Kazan. And we met up at the conference, and I said, "So, what are you going to write up? What are you going to say about the day?" He said, "Well, clearly Putin is isolated." Putin is isolated. This is really smoke and mirrors. This is a charade. This, there's a cold reality, and this is imaginary. Now, if you've got most of the world participating and the Secretary General of the UN, got to mention that, super significant, I think, that Guterres decided to attend. This is big. Putin's not isolated. This is clear. The isolation is that of the West. The West is isolating itself by taking a block approach, a hegemonic approach to viewing the world. The West is isolating itself while threatening to blow up the rest of the world for not going along. And this conference, to me, it really showed that there is something entirely new coming into being, and it just reinforces the need for us, for citizens of NATO countries, that our unique responsibility in changing our countries to prevent what otherwise is going to be a nuclear confrontation, the end of humanity for centuries. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Jason. I do just find that absolutely hilarious that you have people saying that Putin is isolated. I mean, how ridiculous is this? I mean, looking at the BRICS summit, and it's true what you said about the West is actually the one isolating itself. So thank you so much for going through this report on the summit. It's very exciting that you were there in person. If people want to see more reports from the various days that Jason was there, he gave on the ground reports video, very nice video while he was there. You can find that on his Twitter. It's Jason A. Ross, on X, or you can go to eir.news and find some of the reports there as well. But thank you again, Jason, for that. Okay, so next we're going to go to Dr. James Cobey. He's on the board of the Palestinian House of Freedom in DC, and also with the Voices from the Holy Land. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Cobey. Do we have you there? Oh, you're muted there, my friend.
Okay, I've been involved in the Gaza issue since 1964. In 1964, I was a volunteer to UNRWA for 3 or 4 months, working for dehydrated children in Gaza. I went back in 2000 with Physicians of Human Rights and documented violation of the Geneva Conventions by Israel. And I was back 2000 in Al Arab Hospital in Gaza doing surgery. But a couple of things you should all know. I also am a good friend of Miko Peled. Write it down, M-I-K-O, second word, P-E-L-E-D. Miko is a very good friend of mine. He is Israeli. He's written some very important books you should all look into. First, The General's Son. It's about his background. His father was a general in the Israeli army, especially in the 1967 war. After the war, he started studying what happened and realized he's on the wrong side of the whole issue and changed his entire concept. And Miko also learned from that. Miko now lives in the United States, and he's written a couple books. The General's Son you should look at. More important, look at the Holy Land 5, the Holy Land Foundation 5, the Holy Land Foundation 5. It goes into the issues of 5 people in this country working for the Holy Land Foundation, raising money for education in Gaza. The Bush II administration wanted to do something. So they arrested them and accused them of violating international law or American law. They all exonerated. Then they charged them, which you think is illegal. And now they're in jail in the American government because our American government system isn't really safe. But anyway, the Holy Land 5, Holy Land Foundation 5, you should all read. A very short book written by Miko. Now, Miko also started the Palestine House of Freedom. Palestine House of Freedom, and I guess I helped start it too, is based here in Washington, Pennsylvania Avenue, near the Capitol. The goal is to bring people involved and start trying to compete with AIPAC, start lobbying the Congress and teaching. And to go to either Palestine House of Freedom or in the other word is write this down, DARALHURRYA.org. Or either one will get you there, the website. We've had a number of conferences there. They're working very well. And the last conference was with Physicians Against Genocide. Excellent discussion by 4 doctors who work there, what's going on there, and how rough things are. And one of the presenters gave, this was 2 weeks ago, when he was leaving the Eretz border back to Israel, as I've done many times, we're going through a customs the inspection. They emptied his suitcase in a pile, as they did for mine about 5 years ago when I came out. Just emptied it all. And in there were some bottles of water and some sandwiches and some food. And the lady at customs said, throw it out. No, he took it back and gave it to the driver, Palestinian driver, who brought him to the exit point. The lady said, you have to go back and get that. You cannot give food to Palestinian. You have to throw it out, or we will not let you leave the country. This is genocide. They're trying to kill people. But anyway, so you might want to look up also Physicians Against Genocide. They're an excellent group. But also go to the Palestine House of Freedom and get on their website and keep informed what's going on. In the meantime, I hope you're all watching every month Voice of the Holy Land. This month is all about the how universities are clamping down on students. Voicesfromtheholyland.org. But thank you. That's all I was to say. You want a short sentence?
Thank you, Dr. Cobey, for that. I'll make sure to include the links that you mentioned in the chat. But thank you so much for that. And you're absolutely right. The intention is genocidal. And we greatly appreciate what you and other doctors are doing to expose this. And actually, to draw on what you just went through, there was an excellent video that was produced a few weeks back by the Turkish government, which is titled, Israel Will Eventually Pay the Price for Gaza Genocide Going On for a Year, Turkish President Erdogan. That's the title of it. And if we can pull that up, it's actually an incredibly moving short video that I think people should share. Can you pull that up, Dave?
Good afternoon, Seattle. Welcome to your afternoon newscast. We're here to bring you stories that matter most. Today marks the 16th anniversary of the tragic genocide. Commemorations are being held all around the world.
I'm sorry, is it just me that lost the sound?
No, original sound needs to be turned on.
Let's try that again. No problem.
Good afternoon, Seattle. Welcome to your afternoon newscast. We're here to bring you stories that matter most. Today marks the 16th anniversary of the tragic genocide. Commemorations are being held all around the world.
왜 아무것도 안 하셨어요?
Was hast du während des Völkermords gemacht, Großvater? Mais tout était devant vos yeux. Did you just watch it? وفي ماما بينما يقتل أطفال مسلمين
So I think that's a very useful mark, or it gives it a very useful sense for people. And I'll make sure to include the link in the Zoom chat for people. You can find it. I'll put it in the chat on the YouTube video as well, but you can find that video on YouTube. Please share it. It's very useful for people to use to give a sense of what this really is. So again, thank you, Dr. Cobey, for that. Thank you, Turkish government, for that. We are going to add in Jose Vega just for a 1-minute announcement right now. Are you there, Jose? Do we get you on?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you see me? I'm sorry that the light is all weird here, but yeah, look, I'm going to keep this brief. I'm going to go just a little longer than a minute here, but I just wanted to talk to you, everyone here on the panel. So Dr. Mark Perlmutter, a doctor who has been in Gaza, was in Gaza for 3 weeks or so. He was supposed to do a panel today here in New York City at a Mount Sinai in East Harlem, and it was canceled because of threats, because of it would create an environment of danger, so on and so forth. And Mount Sinai has even said that they would like to reschedule a future event where he could be a part of the panel, but not so focused on Gaza, but on all sides of the conflict around the world. And as a result, a new venue was needed because he's on his way up here from North Carolina. And so that, all their alternative arrangements were made. And the question was now, okay, well, then how do we actually blow this up? How do we turn this into a blessing in disguise? And so what we did was we were just mobilizing our own internal networks, people who are signed up to our congressional and Senate races here. And we went to an event with Francesca Albanese, who is the UN Special Rapporteur to the state of Palestine. And she's doing a speaking tour at the colleges here in New York, and we just happened to be going to one. And at a certain point, I stood up during the Q&A. I identified myself. Some people recognized me as an intervener and as a candidate. And I said to people, "Hey, look, this is what happened to Mark, and these are the alternative arrangements made." And I even asked Albanese to help us, get the word out. And the students really just started mobilizing. They were asking for information. They were asking for, some people had gotten the news in that room because the Mount Sinai thing was being publicly advertised through their networks. All the med students were excited to go, and some people got the news that it was canceled from me in that room. And so they just started mobilizing very quickly. And to kind of spread the word on this, and I just wanted to kind of reference something that the UN Secretary General Guterres had said about the world having to act to stop the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. This was him speaking on the sidelines of the COP16 Biodiversity Conference in Colombia on the 30th of October. So just 2 days ago, he warned that Israel could carry out the ethnic cleansing of Gaza if the international community does not make a determined stand to prevent it. And Gutierrez has suggested that the only reason that ethnic cleansing had not already been completed is by the refusal of the Palestinians to be intimidated to leave their homes and by the refusal of Arab nations to accept mass migrations. Gutierrez continued, "I pay tribute to the courage and the resilience of the Palestinian people and to the determination of the Arab world." So basically he's calling on people around the world to do something, as did Albanese. She said, it's important that speakers like this continue to speak at different public places around communities in the country. And she had respected and admired Mark Perlmutter and Feroz and other folks. So I just wanted to report that, and it will be live streamed via Zoom. The Zoom link will be going out to our networks. And if people would like to get on the Zoom, Anastasia, what's the best way we can get the Zoom link? This will be happening around 4 o'clock-ish or so. What's the best way we can get the Zoom link out to people here?
I can send an email to people right after this meeting if you get it to me.
Yeah, okay, I can do that. We'll be opening up around 4 o'clock or so. And
maybe there's also a do you have like a registration page as well? You can share that in the chat.
Yeah. We most certainly do. Okay, I'll put the RSVP link in the chat as well. But yeah, so that's all happening today, and just wanted to thank you for giving me the opportunity here to talk about that.
Where can people find the RSVP page?
People can find the RSVP. Well, I'm going to put it here in the chat first.
For the people on YouTube and X.
Oh,
right
for the
now.
people on YouTube, people can go to sareforsenate.com, and I think there should be an RSVP on there. If not, oh, you know what? I'm just going to, people can go on my website now. There is a link there with the caption that says RSVP here to attend virtually the Pearl Mutter event. So people can go on my Twitter right now at hosebetrigger. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jose, for that, and for jumping in the fray quickly in order to get this valuable presentation from Dr. Perlmutter out. There we go. So the links are in there in the chat, and please go to Sarah for Senate or Vega for Congress.com. Okay. Well, before we go, there's one more person that we have a video statement, but before that, I just wanted to check with Dr. Cobey. You had a website that I didn't quite catch, and I wanted to make sure to include that in the chat. You were spelling it out. I think it was Dara. Could
Yeah, DARALHURRIWIYA, darurali.org. If you see it, you just go to the Palestine House of Freedom, you'll get the same thing. That's
Excellent.
easy. Palestine House of Freedom.
Thank you. We'll make sure to include that in the chat here so people can click on it and get to it. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so our final presentation, and then we'll go on to the discussion period, is our friend from Indonesia, Dr. Chandra Muzaffar. He is the founder and president of the International Movement for a Just World. Excuse me, I'm sorry, not Indonesia, Malaysia, pardon me, Malaysia. So thank you so much for sending this in. Do you have the video statement there, Dave?
Now what I'll do is to give my own take on the theme and look at some of the challenges and the alternatives very quickly. Now, as far as the theme is concerned, all the speakers in different ways talked about the challenges that all nations and peoples face in the present global situation, which is a situation dominated by hegemonic power. We're all aware of that. So the reality of hegemonic power is the underlying cause of a malfunctioning world. That there is a hegemonic power, there's dominance and control by this hegemonic power. I see that as the root problem, and that is the problem that we have to face when we talk about a malfunctioning world and the need for change. That this hegemonic power is responsible for what we see in Gaza and in Lebanon today. You have people suffering as a result of this hegemon, people starving to death, people being killed left, right, and center, whole communities being massacred, plundered, pillaged, people being driven out of their homes. And we are just witnessing these things. Why is that happening? It's because of this hegemonic power. So this reality is something we can't run away from, that we have to find some ways of dealing with this challenge. Let us also remind ourselves that if we look at all the major wars that we have faced since the end of the Second World War, all of them are related to hegemonic power. Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, all the wars that we can think of, they're related in one way or another to the reality of hegemonic power. And if you look at the global economy, it's again related to hegemonic power. Vast disparities between rich and poor, If you look at the concentration of wealth, it's related to hegemonic power. You've got a global system which is dominated by corporations and the profits pursued by corporations. And that is part of the ideology, the economic ideology that supports hegemonic power. It is this hegemonic power that is also related to the role of the US dollar, which in turn is related to other economic problems. So hegemonic power is the root of the problem. If you look at the global economy, look at culture, the global culture. It is hegemonic power that has helped to nurture and nourish a culture centered on individualism in the narrowest sense of the word, a culture of selfishness, which is global. That culture of selfishness where basically the human being is just obsessed with himself or herself. Now this culture of selfishness is the antithesis of all that we want to achieve. Justice, equality, freedom, the oneness of humankind. It's never going to be a reality as long as there is this type of selfishness, and that is related to hegemonic power. In order to foster its own strength, it has strengthened this type of individualism, this type of power centered upon the individual in the narrow sense of the term. So that's the challenge. The solution is to have a different sort of global system where there's greater cooperation, understanding of one another, a greater willingness to sacrifice one's own selfish interests for the larger good. And is that something which is happening? Yes, there are signs. And what are the signs? And I want to conclude on this note. Number one, I would regard BRICS as a very hopeful sign. Countries have come together, BRICS has now expanded to 10 nations. It will continue to expand. It's based on different principles of cooperation and helping one another, sharing resources, strong, helping others who are weak in certain areas and so on. And then you have China and the rise of China, which I think is very positive development. Don't forget they've got a whole vision of development for the future, which is part of their BRI, the Belt Road Initiative. So there are these signs, and we have to strengthen these signs, and hopefully one day we will have a different sort of planet. Thank you.
Who in Malaysia, it's very, very early in the morning for you. So thank you for sending that in for us today. So we will be going to the discussion period now. If you are on Zoom, if you are on YouTube or X or Facebook or whatever platform is being live streamed right now, please go to schillerinstitute.com and you'll find the RSVP page right on the top of the website. If you are on the YouTube, you can also find that in the description area. And I just want to thank everybody who's joined us and all of the speakers who have come with us today. And especially if you are new, we welcome newcomers into the discussion period, but you must be registered to be part of that. And with that, Dave, just let me know when